So welcome to the Association for Consulting Expertise. By the way, I am Priscilla Hanson-Mahoney. I am the president of the association. The Association for Consulting Expertise is a nonprofit. We're a 501(c)(3)(6). We're a business nonprofit. We help each other and support each other through education, resources, collaboration, and helping each other grow and learn and have personal and professional development. Without further ado, I would like to introduce SallyAnn Gray. She is known as a marketing unicorn. She has a lot of expertise and knowledge in marketing. She is a new member to ACE, and she has already stepped forward in many ways of supporting the organization in answering questions about marketing, and she offered to do this program today, and we're really excited to have her here. So thank you, SallyAnn. Take it away.
Great. Hi. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here and, bearing with us while we get technology to catch up with us. As Priscilla said, there will be time at the end for questions. So what we're going to do here today is you can type in your questions in the chat now if you'd like as we go through. I'm not going to answer them during the presentation, because then I'll get off track, forget my own name, and I want to have enough time to get through the content for you. But there will be time at the end for questions, and I'll have my contact information as well in case you need more information. So let's just get into it. So today's presentation, we're focusing on websites for small businesses. I want to tell you why you should listen to me. So I have 20 years of marketing experience in small and medium-sized businesses. And during that time, I have worked at or I've worked with many different types of companies. I've worked in software, health and wellness, web development, the medical industry, fashion, travel. And additionally, I have been on both sides of the new website lifeline. So I have been the client who has been working with a web designer, web developer, and trying to get my wishes to turn into a website magically. But I also have been a web developer and currently do that for clients as well. So I've been on both sides of this. So I see this from a lot of different angles. Additionally, my experience, it encompasses copywriting, social media, lead generation, email marketing, event marketing, and web development. So I look at everything through the lens of a marketer. So I can bring that nerdy technical side as well as the marketing side, looking at things from the audience's perspective. So I think that helps inform what I do in a multifaceted way. I call myself the accidental web developer. Yes, I have a lot of nicknames. Here's my story. I was working for a marketing firm, and we hired a web developer to build us a beautiful, custom, magical, lead generating website. And he started out great, and then he didn't. There was just something happened, and he ghosted us, honestly. He just stopped returning our calls, and all of a sudden we had a website that was 75% done, but not done, and no web developer. And so my company sent me to some classes, and I learned HTML, and I learned Dreamweaver at the time was a good website development tool. And I finished the website and I launched it myself. I was also 25 years old, And that's how I became an accidental web developer. I've learned a lot since then, but that really, it gave me the tools that I needed to go forth and conquer. So, and I've just gone from there. I'm also very data driven. So to me, that means I use information to make my decisions. I don't go just by gut feeling. I don't just say, that looks pretty, let's do it. Rather, I take a look at research and I take a look at analytics and make informed decisions based on that. So that's my little spiel on why you should listen to me, and where I come from. Also, another nickname that I have is Marketing Unicorn. A client gave me that nickname a few years ago because she had a website issue, and called me in a panic because she couldn't fix it and it was critical. And I fixed it in 5 minutes. And that's how I got the nickname Marketing Unicorn. And to me, what that means is that I find impossible solutions for my clients. So enough about me. I know you didn't come here just to learn who I am. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Nailed it. Already went through about me. I'm going to talk a little about the research and planning stage of either a new website, a relaunch, or really just when you're thinking about what's next. I've got a bunch of best practices for you. I have some super special advice at the end. You're welcome. And then we'll have time for questions. So I'm not going to bore you to death with the history of websites and where we have come from in the last 40 or so years, but I am going to tell you about web design now. So responsive web design is where the industry is right now, and what that means is people build a website one time for all device sizes. That wasn't always the case, but it is now. So responsive design allows for content to flow from like a screen this big to a screen this big to a screen this big and still look great, because 50% of website traffic is coming from mobile. So responsive web design, it's really all you need to know. On to research and planning. So when you start thinking about your website, what's next, you need to think about what you want. That's a great place to start. A few easy activities that I recommend are making a list of websites that you like. They don't need to be within your industry. They can just be websites that you like. And in some ways, you don't even need to really understand why you like them. Just make a list. Great to make a list of websites you don't like. And definitely take a look at your competitors' websites. I'm not saying that you're going to steal any ideas from them, but it is helpful to see what your competitors are doing, good and bad. So get that feel, and this helps you really crystallize what you like and what you don't like. It's easier once you're looking at something like a list of websites to say, oh, you know, I know why I like this site. This site gives everything a lot of space, or there's a lot of white space. You'll see commonalities. But it will help you define the elements that you do want to include and the things that you want to avoid on your website. Gathering data. This can be an intense process, or it doesn't have to be. But if you already have Google Analytics on your website, take a look at it, log in, and see which pages are the most popular, and also helpful information, which ones are not popular. Because if no one's going to those pages, maybe you don't need them on your website. Another way to look at data is to survey your audience. If you have great customers, loyal customers, you can ask them how they feel about your website. You can ask them in real life. You can ask them through a survey that you send via email or even post it on social media. But getting that perspective from the people that you're really trying to speak to is very valuable. And again, look at competitors' websites and take a look at what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. So gather this information to put in your cap as you move forward. Really, really important, more important than that research that I just mentioned, is thinking about your goals. Are you selling things? Is that a priority for you? Do you need a website that's super easy for you or your team to update? Will you be blogging? Is search engine optimization important for you? These are the things that you need to think of before you start building a website. And those answers inform the type of website platform that you're going to want to use. So I listed a few here, a few common website platforms: WordPress, Squarespace, Wix, Shopify. Those are website platforms that are very robustly built and easy to edit. There's also the option of custom programming, where a web developer uses custom code to make a whiz-bang special website for you. And those type of languages that they use to build are Python, Java, JavaScript, Ruby on Rails. A lot of choices here. Typically, small businesses don't need anything as intense as custom programming. The problem with custom programming for small businesses is you can be held hostage by technology and a vendor. And what I mean by that is you see something on your website, maybe your hours changed, and you have this really simple, seemingly simple change that you want to make, and you can't do it. And the technology is too tricky for you to feel comfortable doing it yourself. So you reach out to your vendor who built the website for you, and they say, sure, I can do that. It'll cost $300 and it'll be 2 weeks from now. And that's just not good business for a small business owner. So often for small businesses, custom programming is completely unnecessary. Even if you're selling things, Shopify is a really good platform, really robust, easy to use, and all that you need. So, and when it comes to like search engine optimization and blogging, WordPress can be a great option, but also so is Squarespace. It depends on what you're needing and what your capability and skills will allow. So these are things to think before you jump into anything new. All right, let's do best practices. I'll spend a little time on this slide, but I also want to mention that if you would like a copy of these slides after the presentation, I'm happy to send you a copy. If there's going to be some tips on here, some websites that I reference, and don't feel like you need to take a million notes or you're going to miss something, I can send you a copy of this slide deck if you'd like. So, good websites. They're easy to navigate. They clearly describe what you do. So that means when people come to your website, they immediately, at your homepage, know what you do. They might end up at your website on accident and they don't know what you do. That needs to be very clear right out the gate. Also important, it needs to describe how you are different, also known as so what. If you do something that can be seen as a commodity, as in anybody can do it. I know that's not true, but you got to think from the lens of your audience. You need to, right out the gate, describe how you're different and why they should use your services or your product. Also important, and part of every good website, it has search terms. So that means, in a broad sense, it means it has the words on it that your audience is searching for. That means behind the scenes, it means in the content, you have to use those words. Also, it has your address. And I know we live in a digital world, and I know a lot of people provide services, which means they don't have a physical storefront. That being said, people want to know that there's a real business there, a legitimate business, and real people that work there. So even if it's just the city and state that you operate from, people want to know where you're coming from. It helps take out the anonymity of the internet. And a clickable phone number. Oftentimes people are coming to your website just to get your contact information. People start their research at websites, and sometimes they just want to call you, and that's fine, that's great, please do. But make it easy for people, and there are ways to make it so that it just takes a click on a mobile device, click, boom, talk to you on the phone. I'll get into more detail on a lot of these things here coming up. I just wanted to kind of broad scale, good website best practices. Let's talk about bad websites. Not pointing any fingers, but a bad website is not optimized for all screen sizes. I mentioned that 50% of website traffic comes from mobile devices. And you might feel like, hey, you know what? My people aren't looking at me from a mobile device. My people are all looking from a desktop. I'm in B2B, and that's all that people are using. So it's not applicable to me. It is applicable to you, especially when it comes to that contact information, that clickable nature. People will search just to find your contact information, and if they come to your website and they can't find it, and they're on their mobile device because they're wherever they are in the world, you only have a couple seconds to grab people's attention before they leave, and you don't want them to leave because of a bad user experience. And if it looks terrible on a mobile device, that's a bad user experience. Another thing on some bad websites, annoying. So what I mean by annoying, that can mean a lot of different things, but don't use Flash. Don't force your audience to have a plugin, which Flash is a plugin that needs to be updated. And if they don't have Flash, then they can't see your content. That's annoying. Like, don't make it harder for anyone, for sure. And don't have like automatic music start playing as soon as someone gets to your website. If their volume's turned all the way up, they're gonna have a shock. But if they have their volume all the way down and you feel like this is important information, that's also not a good user experience. So letting people choose is a good user experience. Having a video on your website that they click to play because they choose to is a much better experience. Another feature of bad websites is having images that don't have any alt tags. And I will go into more detail on this if you don't know what I mean by alt tags. But at a broad level, that means that search engines can't read your images. And it also means that people with disabilities won't find your website to be accessible. So if someone is trying to look at your website and they're visually impaired, nothing's going to be there for them. That's a bad experience for them. All right, let's get into details. So as I said about having easy to navigate website, this comes down to your sitemap. So that's all of your pages and the organization of your pages, and also the navigation, so the menu that's usually at the top. You got to make it simple. So my advice here, don't make them think. And I have a cute little graphic here. On the left, we see the obvious, which is jobs. You know what that means. That means job openings. We're all trained by the internet, gross, to know what that means. On the far right is something that requires thoughts. So Joborama, you're forcing them to think about what that means. It may seem clever or cute, and there's room for that, but don't make them think. Because you truly only have a few seconds to engage people before they tune out or leave, and you don't want to lose them. So keep it simple, stupid, truly. So another part of the sitemap navigation, making this easy for people, is how your content fits in and making sense out of it. And you can ask people as well. You can ask stakeholders, employees, friends, if things make sense. It's important so that people just can get where they want to go without using your search function, if you have it on your website, and without using like an FAQ page. It's best practice to not need an FAQ because your content actually covers those things for you. Let's talk about your homepage. I've already mentioned you have to grab your audience. The attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. Human beings is actually worse. Sorry to tell you. It's just true. This is where we're at. So you need to be able to grab your audience right away. And that means with impact and clarity. So for your homepage, you really need to consider your objectives. What are your objectives? What are you trying to tell them? But also equally important are your visitors' objectives. What are they trying to do? Why are they coming to your website at all? What are they looking for? So this is your most important page. This is the page that you need to spend the most time thinking about, the most time on your content, the most time designing, because this might be your only impression, not just your first impression. So you got to make it count. I do a lot of writing. I love to write. So a lot of my tips here also have to do with the content on your website, not just how it looks. So really important is to write from the perspective of your website visitors. So ask yourself frequently, what is important to them? What are their objectives? How do they benefit? Because that's what they're trying to do. You're trying to make their life better. So focus on that. And as I've mentioned it, and I'll continue to mention it, why should they choose you over a competitor or over doing it themselves? Whatever it is that you provide for them, you have to make it quite clear why they should. And something that I use in writing all the time, it's called "What's in it for me?" And what that means is asking yourself from your audience perspective, what's in it for me? You know, I could talk all day about how great my product, my service is, and talk someone blue in the face perhaps. But what I really need to get to is what's in it for them. Why should they care? How is it going to make their life better, easier? So that's a helpful tip that I use all the time. What's in it for me? Not myself, but to the person that I'm speaking to. Again, talking about writing for the web. The web is a different beast than writing a book or even a newsletter. You need to be more concise. You can't, I call it a wall of words. And that's not good. A wall of words is not good. Your content needs to be scannable because you just got to be really, really realistic about how much attention you're going to get from a person and how to make that time count. And so I advise people to be ruthless. Keep the important information, the absolute most important information, and don't go into the weeds in your website. This is your chance to grab them and then start a relationship and a conversation, depending upon what you're doing. But, you know, most people buy because of relationships, no matter what we're talking about. And so piquing the interest and then starting the relationship is the point with your website. Again, keep in mind your search terms when you're writing or when you're reviewing somebody's writing for your website. Make sure that you're talking about the words, using the words that people are using in their Google searches. And additionally, important in writing for the web is visual appeal. And those might sound different, like, oh, words, images. But it's not, visual appeal can also be your content. So that means using headlines, which in web terms is called H1, H2, H3. But it helps your visitor understand the taxonomy of your information. So that means what's important. Headline 1 is bigger. It draws eyeballs, breaking things into smaller content blocks, and using a few different font sizes and a little bit of color. These make your content easier to scan, easier to digest. Lists are great. You certainly don't want your entire website to be lists, but their eyes jump to lists rather than a wall of words, as I mentioned. Okay, let's talk about images. Things to consider. Our brains process visual information much faster than text. As a matter of fact, our friends down the street at MIT did a study and found that the brain processes an entire image in less than a second. It's 13 milliseconds is what they found. So it's a great way to get, sometimes complex information is much easier to understand through a simple graphic. It also grabs people's attention. It makes your content and your website more memorable. People are more likely they pay more attention to information with images. So using a balance of text and images is really key to having an engaging website that's going to keep their attention. Additionally, you need to optimize your images. And what I mean by that is don't load huge images to your website. And that can mean, you know, you can have a gorgeous image and it's a few megabytes, and that's too big. And the reason why that's bad is it slows down your website loading. It's also, Google will ding your search results on that. You won't get as high priority in the search engines. Um, so all the way around, it's really bad. So just like as a benchmark, don't load an image larger than 300 KB onto your website. You need to balance the image quality with the file size. There's a tool that I recommend if you don't have Photoshop, access to Photoshop, don't know how to use Photoshop, but you want to optimize your images, you know they're too big. Up on the screen, I have this website, tinypng.com. You can upload images there, and they automatically bring the size, file size down while keeping the quality. And it's a great, quick little free tool to use if you have a huge image that you don't know how to deal with. Search engine optimization. This is a really big topic. You know, we certainly could spend an entire hour on it. We're not going to today, but I'm going to hit the highlights for you that are going to make a big impact here. So number one advice, these are the number one pieces of advice I have for. Start a Google Search Console account. It's free. It's honestly quite easy. It might seem intimidating, but it's actually quite easy. They make it easy for you. And what this does is it alerts the search engines, Google, the primary search engine that the world uses, that your website exists, which is really important because if we do all this work to make your website look good, read well, if nobody knows that it exists and nobody can find it, there was no point. It was a waste of time and money. So the big thing that Google Search Console does is alerts the search engines that you have a website and invites them to crawl your website. So that means to go through your website for content and then serve it up when people are making their searches. Also very important, and this is behind the scenes stuff on your website, is page titles. And this is the sort of thing that you have to log into the back end of your website to do. Lots of website platforms make this very easy, like WordPress and Squarespace. So page titles, it's what is served up in the search results when someone makes their searchity search with their keywords. That's the first thing that they see, and it's also what the search engines give high priority to. So it's important to both the search engines and for the people, human people, who are going to look at your website. Another piece that is really tied to the page titles is your page descriptions. And at this time in history, because the weight and the way that Google does the searching and the tweaks, they're always making changes. Page descriptions, which again is behind the scenes sort of thing, it does not give it's not searched by the search engines, like the keywords, that sort of thing. But the reason why it's important is it's important to the human people who are looking at your site when they reach their search engine results page. This is the second thing that they see when they see that line of text that is your page title. The next thing they see is that description, and that is exactly the reason why they should click. That's what it does. It's telling them what to expect on that page and essentially why they should care. And if it doesn't match what they're looking for, they won't click. So it's really important for the human aspect of your search engine optimization, your search engine optimization. And another factor here that's really important, alt tags for your images. So again, this is something that is behind the scenes, and your website platform is where you do this. WordPress makes it quite easy, so I'll use that as an example. But your images, you have an image, you uploaded it, it exists. An alt tag is the description that goes with it. And if you don't give it a rich description, like the name of your business or the name of a product that people might be searching, it will automatically just give it the file name that that you uploaded. And it might not be descriptive at all. It might just be like a string of numbers or gobbledygook that maybe means something to you, but no one else, and certainly not the search engines. So alt tags are really important, but also making them rich, as in descriptive. So a tiny tip that I have for you here too, don't put your text in an image. And I mean like embedded in the image, as in like you can't click it, you can't highlight it. And the reason why this is important is Google can't read text that's in an image. It can't read it, doesn't see it, it just sees a file with a name and an alt tag. So make sure that your important information on your website is text in some way. Okay, moving on. A different type of search that is also important, and this is not managed by your website. This is outside of your website. So a little bonus, because I thought we were talking about website, but I'm giving you a little extra, is your local search. And it's not just local, it is beyond, but this is so key, and again, free, but you need to create or edit your Google My Business page. So again, our friend Google, and they give extra weight in searches to your Google My Business page. It gets priority, and if your search engines results are here, this is where Google My Business goes, at the top. So it's important, it's there, it's free, it's pretty easy to edit, and add your logo and add some information and link to your website, and you're done. It's great to keep it updated, but if you set it and forget it, that's okay too. Just make sure you set it. This is not just for physical businesses either. If you are a service-based business that doesn't have a storefront, it's still really important because that's how people find you, particularly in their local searches. And I already mentioned that it gives priority position in search results. Here's the search results. Here's Google My Business. Okay, boring stuff. Boring and necessary, okay? The world that we live in, it's important and necessary to have a privacy policy and a terms and conditions page on your website, even if no one really actually ever looks at it. It's good to have. And I realize that this is intimidating. Maybe not for Carrie, our legal expert here, but for the rest of us, it's like, oh my gosh, where would I even start on having a policy, privacy policy and terms and conditions? I have great news and a free tool. It's up on the web, or it's up on the screen right now. Termly.io, again, free service. And you input a little bit of your business information. It's a wizard. It walks you through the whole thing, and it outputs a broad and basic privacy policy it'll create for you, also terms and conditions. And so you can copy that information, paste it into a web page, link it at the bottom of your website, and be done with it. So this is a great thing to just take care of, and you don't really have to think too hard about it from then on. Fonts. Let's talk about fonts. I love fonts. You don't need to be boring. There are a lot of web-safe fonts out there, which means they look great on any device. Nobody needs to download custom fonts for it to look great. And it's a good way to mesh your content and your style and show a little bit of personality. You need to balance, again, balance being able to read it. You don't want to use a font that's all swirly bops and nobody knows what it says. But you also don't need for it to be like Arial. So finding that balance to make it interesting, but also readable. And don't be afraid of white space. White space can be really beautiful. So don't feel like you need to fill every crevice of your website with words or anything, really. White space can look really amazing. Retail. So if you have a physical storefront, please, for the love of everything holy, please give on your website prime real estate to your phone number, your physical address, and your hours. These are the most common reasons why people go to a website for a retail space. They need to gather that information. And if you make them dig for it or search for it, you might lose that business, might lose their attention. You might also force them to call you to ask, which takes you away from anything else you're doing. So please do that. These sort of things can be easily linked up at the top. Your address, your phone, contact page, and the footer of your website. So it's on every page of your website. These are the common places that people go to look for that important information. I mentioned frequently asked questions. If there is, and this applies to services and businesses that have a storefront, if you get a lot of the same type of questions through phone, email, social media, find a place on your website to put that information. If you put it in a place where people can find it easily, you're going to save yourself a lot of work. That you'll get fewer of those inquiries that take up time that you could be using for other things. Not to take away from that connection with your audience is important, but just make it easy for them at any chance. Oh man, I need some coffee. All right, branding. So I realized that a lot of small businesses don't have the luxury of a graphic designer or, a really iconic brand like you see here on the screen. That doesn't mean that you're not allowed to have some guidelines, some amount of brand that makes it consistent and to some extent recognizable. And that can be done through using the same fonts over and over, whether it's your email, your website, all the places where you have content. Having a list of the colors that you use for your brand. It can be as few as 3. Don't make it too complicated because then it's like a circus show. But just a few things that you can put in place that are going to be consistent. And that will help people know who you are. I have a little example here, okay? Any idea what website, what company this might be? Because I took out the logo, really fancy here. It's Target. So just an example of how they use their brand, and they have such a level of consistency that you know who they are. All right, moving on. Social proof. this is so wonderful for your website. It carries much more weight than anything that you could say about your business or yourself. Input from a third party, it carries a lot of weight. It's social proof is the new word of mouth. Word of mouth still exists and is amazing. Social proof is showcasing your customers' successes and experiences. So taking testimonials and putting them on your website, taking that shows that your business is providing value, and it helps people put themselves in the seat of your audience. Like, oh, I'm similar to that person. That would help me. And like I said, use quotes from success stories, from happy customers, from reviews that you've received. It's better than anything that you could say about what you do. Contact page, super de-duper important. It's fine to use a contact form for sure, but also make sure to include your phone and email address in case people don't want to fill out a form, or they just want to reach out to you right now. They're just like, I need this information this moment. So make sure to include that on your contact page, even if you have a form. Test any form that you have to make sure it's working. This is so important, and it's often overlooked. And do it every so often too. I mean, don't just do it the first time you launch your website. And include your address to whatever level you're comfortable with. If it's a PO box, if it's a co-working space, that's something that you can do. Some co-working spaces offer something called like a community member, where you can use that address to receive mail and use it for your business. But if you're a service-based business and you don't need an address, I recommend using the city and state so that people have an idea where you're coming from. And if you're providing a service, that means that you're working people to people, and they want to know that you're people. They want to know that you're legit, that you're real. Don't forget to include your social icons. This is another reason why people come to your website, and we are your audience is used to finding this information on your website. They're used to seeing it in your navigation or in your footer, and sometimes also on your contact page. But the best places to put them are the header right there, just like sneak it in at the top so people can just click over and like you, and the footer as well. Analytics, I mentioned that I'm data-driven. I am a nerd, self-proclaimed, happy to be. A lot of website platforms have analytics built in so that you can look at how much website traffic you're receiving, and how much time people are spending on your website, how much time they're spending on a web page. That's great information. And even if you don't look at it all the time, it's important to have it. And my advice, even if your website platform has this information built in, and you say, well, I don't need Google Analytics on my website, my WordPress, I have a plugin that tells me that stuff. Well, I suggest getting Google Analytics anyway. And one reason is that Google Analytics follows your domain, as in your website domain. If you ever choose to change website platforms, that analytics from your, let's say, WordPress website goes away when you stop using that platform. But if you're using Google Analytics, it follows your web address. So no matter what platform you're using, you're still going to get that information. So that it's a free tool. It's a very good tool, and it's not that hard to implement. So please add it. Testing. So this is once you've got your website up, you've made your changes or whatever you've done, or you're wondering like, how is my website going? You can check your site speed. This is a really good tool that I recommend that's up on the screen right now that checks your website speed from like different places across the nation and the world to see how quickly your site is rendering. And this can really give you some good information in terms of how are people experiencing my website, and can tell you if there's some major problems that you need to address. Another free tool from our friends at Google that helps you check how your website appears from lots of different devices, really helpful. So I'm talking desktop, tablet, mobile, is on the screen here and helps you understand how your website is rendering from those different screen sizes. Okay, I'm excited. This is actually my favorite part. I'm sorry I made you wait this long. I have some just major pieces of advice for you here. So let's do it. Don't make your audience think. I'm not saying your audience is stupid. I am saying that the people that come to your website, your customers, your prospects, they don't have a lot of spare time. They don't have a lot of spare bandwidth. So don't make them think. Make it as easy as possible for them to find the information that they want, to find the information that you want to give them. Don't make them think. I already mentioned this, but I can't help but say it again. What's in it for me? You got to make your content relevant. You need to consider your audience. Who is your audience? Their perspective, their goals, and then make it relevant. So what's in it for me? Keep it in mind. It's very helpful. Next up. This is a piece of advice that I give to a lot of my clients that doesn't necessarily have to do with your website, but it definitely can. And that is a lean canvas business plan. So yeah, you might have a business plan that you created years ago and literally never looked at again. Or maybe you don't have one, and no shame, like that's fine. A lean business plan is a one-page business plan, 20 minutes of your life that can really crystallize the most important parts of your business for yourself. It's an internal exercise for you to do that helps you identify your target audience, the top problems of your audience, solutions for those problems, your unfair advantage, and your unique value proposition. And because you're limited to one page, you can do this online. Just Google Lean Canvas Business Plan. They're free. And it really forces you to think critically and identify the most important parts, and then use that to guide the things that you do. Like cut the fat, be ruthless, and focus on what's important, because people don't have time for anything else. And test everything. I already mentioned, please test your forms. I have a story. It has a happy ending. A client of mine, they did not, their contact page form, so this is where they should be getting a lot of their leads. They hadn't received a lot of leads in 9 months, and they were like, gosh, what's going on out there in the world? And then we tested their form, and it was broken, and they didn't know it. And they looked back at like the last time they had received, a contact inquiry, and it was 9 months, and their form had been broken for 9 months and they didn't know it. And Lord knows how many people had tried to reach out to them in that time, and it fell on deaf ears. So test everything. Test it out the gate, but test it every so often too. Put it on your calendar every 6 months as an event. Test forms. It doesn't have to be a major rager. Don't make yourself think either. Just put it on your calendar and just do it every so often to make sure it's working, because you do not want to lose any of these people that have raised their hands to say, I'm interested in what you do. Oh my gosh, I have more advice. Okay, so this, again, is not limited to just websites. You're welcome. So here we go. When you have to write anything, so we're talking website content, newsletter, just anything, write a shitty first draft. This is so helpful. I know how intimidating a blank piece of paper can be, a blank Word document in front of you, and you don't know where to start and you're intimidated. Just start writing. Just start writing. Tell yourself, this is a shitty first draft. No one has to see it. I'm going to make edits, and just go. Just word vomit. And this is a great way to get started and move forward. So that, as a writer, that's my advice to you. I also highly advise anyone who types anything. Do you type anything? Anything? Just anything? Oh, you do? Okay. Use this tool, Grammarly. It's fantastic. There's definitely a free version that is amazing, and it might be all you need. I use the paid program, the paid version, because I write a lot. It helps me be a better writer, but Grammarly is magic. It helps not only, definitely beyond just spell checking, but it also looks at your tone. It gives you alternative options in terms of what you're saying. It just helps you write better, and it catches mistakes. So it's magic. Use it. Use the free version. It's fantastic, truly. Those were my pieces of advice. So let's do questions. I hope you're still here. All right, I'm looking over.
Here, I'm going to come back on video as soon as I figure out how. I might not be able to. I think I might have permanently removed myself from the screen. But that's okay.
You were. You just came up on video a second ago.
Did I?
Yeah, you're there.
I'm here. Okay, you know what? It's my speaker view. Show self view. There I am. Oh my gosh, there I am. We did have questions for you, SallyAnn.
Okay.
So, Tom Chadbourne asks, what's the balance between distracting colors and multiple sizes, I'm assuming he means fonts, and effective colors and multiple sizes?
Yeah. So I advise that you use at minimum around three to four different sizes for your content. So the text, the kind of paragraph sort of stuff, you know, that's a regular size, but then have at least 3 heading sizes of different weight. And so like your H1, your heading 1, this is like your headline at the top of your page. It might be as big as 60 font size. And then your second size might be around 38 or 44, and your third size might be around 26. So definitely, yeah, you need to strike a balance between like too many sizes. So about 4 sizes for a website can be great. And regarding color, you definitely, you know, there's going to be white on your site no matter what. There's going to be a shade of black. My last name's Gray. I like gray. But So you'll have a shade of white, whether it's all the way white, a shade of black, whether it's all the way black, fine too. And then one or two other colors. One primary color that's not too aggressive and easy to read. And it's nice to have a pop of color. I like to call it a pop of weird, that is visually interesting, but not overused. So that's high level what I recommend. But also, once you make something and you have those different font sizes and those different colors, show people that you value their opinion. And they don't even have to be in your industry. They could be a friend of yours, but make sure they're an honest friend, who's
That's great.
you like respect their their vision. But get some feedback, because people will tell you, like, you're assaulting my eyes. This is too much. Calm it down. And you can take a step back. So those are my suggestions, especially when you're doing it yourself.
Perfect. And I'm going to ask a follow-up question to that. I've heard, and maybe you can either, it's a myth or you can validate what I've heard, but Google tends to like it when you use H1 or H2 headings.
They do.
And so that helps your SEO?
It does. That's right. So if you are putting the H1, H2, H3, it helps prioritize your content to Google, as in you're telling them, you're signaling with those H1, H2s. You're signaling, this is the most important thing I have to say.
Yeah.
And so they weight it with more authority. So it's important to put your key, your most important thoughts, those search terms in those bigger headings, those H1s, H2s.
Okay, that makes sense. And then we have another question coming in from John Shorb. Does a simple free survey work on your website work? An example might be a 5-question survey to indicate work team effectiveness or client customer relationships or organizational culture. So what do you think about surveys?
Sure, they can be great. You need to make sure that you're driving people to the survey. You can put a survey on your site and be like, yeah, this is so cool. But like, if nobody knows it's there, you're going to be like, why did I spend any time on that? So make sure you're driving people there. And so you could put a survey like on your homepage, or you could put it on a separate page. If you put it on a separate page and you're driving people to fill it out through social media, through your emails, that might get a better response. But maybe you want to put it on your homepage and just see what happens. One of the nice things about websites is nothing's permanent.
Yeah.
So you can
actually, you shouldn't leave anything permanent, right? You should always
really, please,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Google likes it when you rearrange the furniture every once in a while, right?
Definitely, yeah. And that's, I call that a facelift, and you should do that every so often, and get that feedback from your audience, and maybe look at your analytics to see what's working, what isn't, and make some tweaks, and that can be fantastic.
I know
I also wanted to mention,
Kroll, who was a guest of our webinar a couple weeks back, she has a survey on her website, and I see her doing a lot of Facebook ads pointing Facebook towards that survey. And her quiz is to understand your organization type, whether you're she's a personal organizer. So that's a good way to push people to your website, is if you're saying, take my quiz on Facebook, but it pushes them to the website. So
yeah,
perfect.
And in that case, I would recommend having the survey on its own page. So
okay.
If it was on your homepage, but it was like at the bottom, and you're like, take my survey, and you link them to your homepage, they're like, where's the survey?
Where is it?
And I don't know if you heard me say, but don't make them think.
Don't make them think. I love that. I love that. We have another question.
Can I say another thing about surveys?
Yes.
I love whoever asked that question. Sorry, I don't remember.
It was John Schwarb.
John, I love what you said about a quick 5-question survey, because it is important to not make it too long, because you will lose people's interests. So just try to keep it as focused as possible. So 5 questions, I think, yes, that's great.
Perfect. And that's a good way to capture their email, right? To build your mailing list.
Mm-hmm.
So, great. Awesome. Another question we have is there one best platform for a combination of podcast, blog, monetization capacity, teaching capability? So it looks like they're trying to find a multifunction website that would enable them to have a podcast, a blog, and to monetize.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't have one off the top of my head that I could say, this is the one for you. You could email me, and I could find out for you, because I have a network of people that I collaborate with, and I know a lot of businesses that provide that type of service, like online courses.
Mm-hmm.
And they use great platforms that are just for that. And so what I would recommend is, yeah, as you mentioned, a platform specifically for that. Unfortunately, because I haven't built on any of them, I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I can email you about it and give you some advice.
My answer is always the one that you're going to use.
I love it when other people do research.
You're probably not going to use it. So
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
And I was jumping up and down when you mentioned the Lean Business Canvas, because that's a tool I teach, and also the customer journey. It's so important to understand your audience when you're building your website. You're writing your text, your content towards a specific person, so that when that person lands there, they're like, oh, I'm at home. I found my space. I found answers. And
right.
I love how you mentioned that. But could you go into a little bit more about writing, having content specifically for a specific audience? Because most of us are service providers. Most of us are providing maybe an intangible service.
Mm-hmm.
So could you talk a little bit about personas and writing for them?
Yeah. So it starts with identifying your audience. And so thinking about who you have helped already, who you helped the most, who has seen the greatest benefits, who you've liked working with the most, things of that nature. And so look to that past if you have that, if you're not just starting out. And so really think about who those people have been and how would you describe them. And this can go all the way from demographics, so gender, age, geographics, where are they located in the world, if that's important to what you do. And service-based industry, often that's not important, and that's totally fine. So you're thinking about what's actually important here. And then psychographics, which is, what drives people, what are they interested in, what are they reading, what websites do they go to, definitely what industry are they in, if you are, industry focused. And so describing who these people are, and, best case is describing the ones that you've helped the most and that you have liked working with the most, doing the things that you want to do. And then try, as you mentioned, personas. Personas are great. You can kind of make these imaginary people that are kind of a superset, and you can do a few, because I think one person isn't quite going to cut it for you. So you might have like a decision maker and identify what they're typically like in terms of demographics, psychographics, all those things, but also maybe an influencer or a user, and identify who those people are. And then, oh my gosh, I just love to say it, what's in it for me, from their perspective, and look at those different people. in terms of what are they looking for from you? What solution, what problem are you going to solve for them? And then, and really just like live in that information when you're creating anything, when you're getting ready to, when you're making a presentation, when you're doing your website content, when you're writing an email, whatever it is. But really put yourself in those shoes, and it helps with the persona. It helps that you're kind of giving it a real person instead of this like nebulous, oh, my client like shoes. Like, what does that
Right.
mean?
And I love what you said about color palette. Choose a color palette. I think color palettes are very important. I mean, Ace has a color palette, our dark blue, our light blue, our dark blue, and our grays. And we picked that very purposefully because we feel it's a professional image.
Yeah.
And when I first branded Blazing Trails Coaching, I kind of went with this outdoorsy, earthy. It was pink and purpley sunset colors. And my persona is people who work outside with their hands doing, landscaping, construction, that sort of thing. They weren't relating to the pinks and purples.
Yeah.
They relate to orange and blues. So I think it's really important that when you are picking a color palette that you're thinking about that persona. Can you just talk a little bit about like if somebody doesn't have a color palette, like how they might go about choosing that for themselves?
Yeah. So if you have a logo, start there. Grab some color inspiration from your logo and use those colors.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Ace has done with the blues. My pop of color, my logo is orange, tangerine, and gray. And so I use a pop of orange. That's one of the things that I use for my brand. So yeah, making it relatable is a really, really good point. And as we talked about, nothing is forever on the web. So if something doesn't work, you can pivot. But so starting with your logo in terms of what are those colors, and then branching out either a little bit or complementary. And but again, as I think it was Tom, we talked about like not going too wild. Like don't throw the rainbow in there.
Yeah, sometimes it does get a little bit rainbows. We have too many colors going on.
Yeah, and then you cut back. You go back to the basics, and using shades of one color is a great. If you have a primary color that's like a blue, and you can use shades of that. And then I personally I call it a pop of weird, but having a complementary color that is like boom, just not a lot, not all the time.
Yeah, when I went and picked out my colors, I actually went, of course, you can't do this right now, well, you could. They don't want you browsing. But I went to a paint store, and I just looked through all the color chips and picked the ones I liked and brought them to my graphic designer. So I'm sure that you get that all the time. Like, I like these colors. Can you do something with these?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that, too. You were mentioning SEO and alt tags and the speed of your website and colors and fonts. And I don't know about everyone else on this call, but I'm going, holy schmoly, that's a lot of puzzle pieces to put together. And I'm sure you have a way of helping us do that, right?
I do. I really hope I didn't overwhelm people. I did talk for a while. Yes, so thanks for that segue. Yes, these are services that I provide. And I primarily work with small businesses. It's what I've chose to do because I love working with entrepreneurs and seeing a lot of impact and helping people that don't have the capacity or capability and helping them bring some more professionalism to their businesses. And so the way that I do that is I build websites for people. I have a team that also builds websites. I have wonderful graphic designers. I also provide content services, copywriting services, SEO services, and marketing strategy is really what guides everything for me.
Yeah.
It always starts with strategy. Is what are you trying to do? What are your goals? What's working right now and what absolutely isn't working right now? And what's the best way to meet those needs?
I love
Thanks.
what you said too about if your phone. I always work with service professionals, and they're like, "Well, I don't need to hire a marketing person. I don't need a website or whatnot because my phone's ringing off the hook." And I'm like, if your phone is truly ringing off the hook, you need a marketing person because you need to filter those calls before they get to you. And so I loved what you said about if you could have all those questions answered before they have to pick up the phone to call the entrepreneur, it's going to save us so much time on the back end answering questions that could just be available for our public. So that's wonderful. We have one last question. Doug Packard would like to know what you have against today.
I saw that question. I was like, what does he mean? What did I say? And then I remembered that. I don't have any problem with today. Today is Friday. And you know what? In a parallel universe, I was giving this presentation face-to-face starting at 7:30, and I wasn't wearing yoga pants. So I don't love COVID-19, but this is okay.
Today is good.
Today is fine. So sorry if I gave you false illusion.
Well, SallyAnn, thanks, John, for calling her Marianne in the chat. That threw me. SallyAnn has her information. She can be reached at SallyAnn at vervestheword.com, and check out her website. She has a lot of information there as well, Verve's the Word, and she will be more than happy to share with you any information she can. I'm sure she'll get you on the right track. And I know that even some of us have existing websites. This presentation today has inspired me to go back through my website, simplify things, probably take out some services that aren't relevant right now because I'm not going on to the field to do training right now. And so there's so many things that we could probably tweak in our websites, and I'm sure SallyAnn would be more than happy to help you, especially right now while things are changing and maybe your services are changing. Maybe the way that you're doing things are changing. So you need to reflect that in your website for sure. Thank you so much, SallyAnn. This has been a very, very informative presentation. I think just from the comments I'm seeing in chat, a lot of people got a lot from it. And for those of you who are members of ACE, and for those of you who are guests of ACE, if you're a guest, please know that we provide educational segments like this for our membership. So if you are interested in becoming a member, please reach out and we will be in touch with you as well. Our next webinar is on May 26th, and it's Leading Through Stress, and our presenter is Patrick Verano, and I haven't learned how to pronounce his last name, so I apologize if I didn't get that right. But we also have a business luncheon coming up, of course, on Zoom, and that will be on May 20th at noon. And so if you want to share more with your ACE comrades, and that's when we'll be able to get face-to-face on Zoom and talk to each other and share what's going on in our worlds, we can certainly do that. SallyAnn, again, thank you so much for presenting today.
Thanks for having me.
And have a great Friday. Like you said, punch Friday in the face. I didn't know if today had a face, but if it has one, we're going to punch it. I like to say I'm going to kick it till I need new shoes. That's my
I like that.
Time behind me on that one, you know?
Cool.
Kick it till we need new shoes. All right, folks, I hope you have a great day. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much, SallyAnn.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thanks.